Um, both stress and anxiety have a lot of similar mental and physical symptoms, such as irritability, anger, fatigue, maybe some digestive issues or difficulty sleeping. The focus with anxiety is this characterized by this feeling of unease and dread. So we're typically really feeling a sense of unease because of this unidentifiable trigger, and we are uncertain about how to really manage it. And usually stress is typically more manageable, albeit maybe difficult to get through. However, anxiety can lead to more overwhelming pain and lead to sometimes us not be able to manage ourselves on a normal daily basis. So we might become anxious to interact with our friends, maybe become overly anxious and unable to manage our school effectively or work effectively. So anxiety becomes more of this overwhelming and exaggerated sense of stress where we can't necessarily manage it effectively, and it can develop into more complex disorders such as generalized anxiety disorder, social anxiety, or phobias, to name a few. So high anxiety can really prevent us and be barriers towards living more fruitful or well-rounded life. So we want to better understand and differentiate these two so that we can have, again, a proper way to manage and address them in an effective manner. So how do these typically develop, or what is it that makes us more vulnerable to these different responses? So both of them have very similar vulnerabilities and things that can cause us to be vulnerable to stress or anxiety, such as maybe we have a genetic or family history of anxiety. Maybe there's complex trauma that leads us to be more anxious. A lot of the environments or social setting can exacerbate some of our stressors and lead us to develop more anxious habits. I think the main point with anxiety is that we have this rumination and worry thought pattern of beliefs and perceptions that kind of spirals into anxiety. And so these things that maybe can exacerbate anxiety and stress, such as self-care, if we're not managing our health on a daily basis, can make the symptoms worse. So making sure we're staying on top of our sleep, our diet, exercise is highly important. Definitely making sure we're aware of our misuse of substances or abusing substances that can lead us to more vulnerability factors, and how that can, again, exacerbate our emotions of anxiety. And then, again, if we don't have appropriate, adequate coping skills, if we're using maybe the ones that aren't as effective for anxiety and trying to just focus on managing the stress, it can exacerbate anxiety and vice versa. So we want to make sure that we're using the proper tools and skills to better manage what it is that we're actually trying to target. Is it the stress of in the moment that's happening, or is it my anxious thoughts that are getting in the way of the actual daily living? So Dr. Cao is going to talk a little bit about how to better and effectively manage our stress and anxiety.
All right, I think, Ali, do you mind putting my video back on? Give me 1 second, guys. Sorry about this. Ali, are you able to put my video back on? Sorry. Okay, well, as Ali is helping me figure that out, we're going to talk a little bit more about ways to cope. And everyone can still hear me okay? Yes? Okay. So I think this topic really comes at a relevant time for us right now. And what we're going through is a really stressful, anxiety-provoking pandemic, where we're at the peak and we're worried about ourselves and our loved ones. Some of you are doing online schooling, and so that is a big adjustment to adjust to in and of itself. Some of you are getting ready and prepping for your finals, and so I think that this is definitely a really relevant topic at this time to talk about. First and foremost, I want to talk about just checking in with ourselves regularly. So this idea of being able to know what our moment to moment experiences are and being more mindful and aware of what those are so that we can better cope on a regular basis. So what I usually tell my patients is one of the best things you can do is check in with yourself at least 3 times a day. If it's setting your alarm on your phone morning, afternoon, and nighttime to practice this, that might be a really helpful way to keep you accountable in doing this. So the idea is asking yourself 3 main and simple questions. So first and foremost, what is my distress level in this moment when I'm checking in with myself? On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being, I'm highly dysregulated. I feel like I have no control over my situation and it's really hard for me to manage, versus 1 is I'm calm, cool, and collected. I don't really need anything in this moment. So the first question is, what is my distress level on a scale of 1 to 10? The second question is, what am I feeling in this moment as my distress level is so high? Am I feeling anxious? Am I feeling confused? Am I disappointed? And then my third question would be, what is it that I'm needing in this moment to really help myself cope? So the idea is, the more you're able to ask yourself those questions on a regular basis, the more you're able to build that muscle memory and that ability to reinforce your ways of coping on a regular basis. Okay, so I encourage you to try that. Set your alarms, check in with yourself on a regular basis. The next one is identifying your triggers. So being more aware of what makes you vulnerable to anxiety can definitely better manage and cope ahead for those situations. There, yeah. Okay. So understanding what about school, what about relationships, what about your work really makes you stressed. So we know that that makes you stressed, but what is really contributing? What are those thoughts that you're having that really contributing to your anxiety, and writing those areas of concern down. Like Ryan said earlier, he gave a really great example of school, for example, right? Stress might sound like, okay, I have a test tomorrow and I didn't really study and I'm really worried about like how I'm going to do, versus anxiety might sound like, if I don't do well tomorrow, I'm going to fail this test. I'm going to fail my class. I'm going to, end up not getting a really good GPA, and I might as well just not do it, right? I might as well just not go to school tomorrow and just avoid. So I don't have to deal with all of that. And so if you're able to identify the things that are really making you more vulnerable to stress or anxiety or both, the better you'll be at coping ahead for some of those situations. Okay, and the next one is identifying your go-to coping skills. So in the registration questions, we had asked, do you feel like you have effective coping skills? Some of you said, I'm not sure. Some of you said yes, some of you said no. And so the idea of coping skills is really general and broad. It's basically this idea of what is it that helps you work through a situation and makes it a little bit better for you. What helps you calm down or soothes you? What helps alter your mood into a more positive mood, right? And so what I would encourage you to do is write down 3 to 5 of your top, go-to coping skills, whether that's reading, writing, exercising, cooking, whatever it is that gets you into a better mood or calms you down when you're stressed out, and carry that list with you, whether in your wallet, put it in your phone, put it on your mirror, your bathroom mirror or whatnot, somewhere where you can have easy access to it, because in those moments when we need it the most, sometimes our minds don't really register what it is that we need to do to help ourselves. So having a little kind of cheat sheet can be helpful sometimes too. The next thing is practicing distress tolerance skills. So this concept of distress tolerance is, we teach this in our programs here in regards to dialectical behavioral therapy. And so this is basically the idea of how do you manage and get through a quote unquote crisis situation where you feel like you don't have any control, you don't feel like you can manage the situation, and you're just so flooded with all these emotions. What is it that you need to do in that moment to not make the situation worse and not spiral, and just really help you temporarily move through, de-escalate, and regulate how you're doing in that moment to then proceed with whatever it is that you were doing in a more effective way. So some of these skills might be diaphragmatic breathing or deep breathing. You know, a lot of times when we're really anxious, we our heart rates go up and we have a hard time kind of slowing down our breathing. So the idea is to really slow down our bodies in order to slow down our minds as well. So being able to deep breathe, you know, breathing, inhale 4 seconds, exhaling for 6-7 seconds, and doing that for 2 to 3 minutes straight, and really just focusing on that. You could do progressive muscle relaxation, which is kind of scanning your body for different tense areas and really like tensing up those muscle areas and letting it go and releasing, doing that several times, because a lot of times we don't realize how much tension we're holding in our bodies because of the stress or the anxiety that we're experiencing. And so being aware of the different body parts that are triggered or that the anxiety or the stress is showing up somatically, that can really help to release some tension as well. Other things might be like self-soothing with your 5 senses. So I like to take warm showers because that really soothes me. I like to drink a hot cup of tea because that also soothes me. Doing different things with your 5 senses, sometimes even like lighting a candle or whatever, you know, it is that like you enjoy doing with your 5 senses to kind of just calm yourself down in that very moment to work through. That can be really helpful. The next thing is scheduling time for self-care, and scheduling is the key word here because I think a lot of times we're so, we have so many different responsibilities, whether to family, friends, work, school, and we're so active all the time and we don't have a lot of time to slow down. And the goal is to actually slow down because we can always easily hit burnout when we're not taking care of ourselves. And so the idea is to mark a time in your week or in your day, same time, same day, every week, every day, whatever it is, 10 minutes to 15 minutes a day, 1 to 2 hours a week, whatever you want to create it to be. But keeping that consistent because that's sacred time for you. And that's time for you to take care of yourself so that you can take care of all your other responsibilities. Because if we're going through the motions, we're on autopilot, we're doing all of these other things in our day-to-day lives, but not really giving it our best because we're so burnt out, that doesn't help us at all. It makes us more unproductive, and it's kind of like a barrier for ourselves if we don't self-care. Okay, so one of the most important things is to not cancel on yourself. That is really important time just for you, and take it and savor it. Because all the other stuff can work around that. Okay. The next thing is remembering your locus of control. So the concept of locus of control is really this idea of, in a situation where I feel like I don't have control, or circumstances where I don't really have control over, what is it that I do have power or influence over? What is it that I can contribute or manage within myself to help that situation be better for me or better for other people? So take COVID, for example, right? This is very relevant for us in the here and now. The idea is to, well, we can't necessarily control that COVID is here and present with us and it's very live and well. But what we can do to adapt to the situation more effectively is to wear our masks, socially distance, sanitize and wash our hands, right? Doing things to minimize the stress and the anxiety that we have around the situation that we can't necessarily control. So in some ways you are contributing and you are controlling as much as you can within your own willpower. And so I would encourage you guys, if there are any situations in your life right now where you're really struggling and you feel like you're really stuck, and you feel like maybe you don't really have as much control, what I'd encourage you to do is take out a piece of paper, draw a little circle in the middle, and on the outside of the circle is to identify all the things that are outside of your control and make sure that those things you truly can't touch or you truly can't, manage. So on the outside of the circle, that's what's out of your control. And then in the middle, identify all the things that you actually can do to help yourself in that situation. Because sometimes seeing the distinction between the two it can be really relieving, because I think with anxiety, we often feel like we need to control everything, or we feel like we're so completely out of control, and in our minds, we're not necessarily thinking as rationally. We often catastrophize or jump to conclusions or overgeneralize, and it's hard to distinguish that there are things that I can do and there are things that I can't do. And so what is it that I can do to adapt to my situation? Okay. The next thing is opposite action. So staying engaged. I think a lot of times with anxiety, for example, what we tend to do is avoid. We tend to isolate, we avoid, we don't want to deal with whatever it is that we're faced with in that moment, right? And the more that we do that over time, the more we build a barrier and a wall for ourselves, that it gets harder and harder to actually face whatever it is that we're struggling with, right? And so in the long term, avoiding is really not good. It's actually more detrimental to you and your mental health if we keep avoiding and we're disengaged, right? So the idea is to do the opposite, which is to actually approach, to actually stay actively engaged in whatever it is that you are struggling with, as hard as it is, right? So if you're able to kind of get the hang of coping a little bit better, and you're engaging in those situations that are really anxiety provoking for you, the better you'll get at realizing that, okay, this is actually positively reinforced, where you're able to say, okay, this isn't too bad. And if it's not too bad this time, I can do it again the next time. And the more that you approach, the better and more effective you'll be at coping with those stressful situations. And you can then realize, maybe my anxiety is slowly reducing. Okay. The next thing is really being kind and validating yourself. So I know this is a hard one, especially during these times, since we're struggling so much as a community and individually, we're having to learn to adapt to different changes, and it's really hard. And so being able to give yourself a little bit of benefit of the doubt and understand that these are unprecedented times, being able to acknowledge and say, like, look, this is really hard for me. I've never had to deal with online schooling before. I've never had to work from home before, never had to socially distance and not see my friends or my family. This is all really hard, and it's really challenging. It's making me sad. It's making me disappointed. It's making me confused. Whatever it is that you're feeling, acknowledging that and allowing yourself and giving yourself that permission to feel. And at the same time, allowing yourself to realize, okay, and there's still some things that I can do about it too, right? That you're not completely helpless, and that there are things that you can do to manage. And then the next thing is identifying 3 good things. So as I mentioned earlier, with anxiety, we tend to really, sometimes what we do is our thought process, we have what we call like thinking errors or cognitive distortions, where we often catastrophize or overgeneralize or just go to the worst of the worst in the extremes. And really, that doesn't help us at all, right? And I think what we often do is turn our attention and really focus just on the things that have gone wrong and not the things that have gone right or gone well, right? So what I would encourage you to do is every night, if you can, take out a piece of paper or journal or whatever it is that you have on hand and start writing down 3 things that actually went well or decently that day. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be great. Something that is maybe different than your day-to-day, or different than what's been going on the last few weeks or months in your life. So say, for example, if it's hard for you to get out of bed, you're just so overwhelmed and it's, you just really don't want to deal with your day to day. But this morning you actually got up on time and actually logged into school. That's really great, right? Or someone, you haven't spoken to said hi to you today. That's great too. Writing these things down can help shift your perspective just a little bit more, right? And then the last thing I want to touch on is seeking out support. So I think it's important to remember that we're not alone, and there are a lot of clinical professionals out there that are there to really help you figure out this, road ahead, and all the challenges and struggles that we're going through and individually we're going through. And so making sure that you seek out the help when you need it and before it gets worse, right? And then also understanding that there are people around you to, aside from professionals, to really help you along the way as well. So with that being said, I'm going to segue over to some school resources that can be of help to you too. I'm not sure if everyone is aware of some of these resources that they have at school. So for those of you that are in school, in college, there are several different avenues that you can take. And, the more you access the possibly the better you'll feel supported in, your challenges and your struggles. So hopefully you all know your counseling center on campus. Hopefully you're checking in frequently with your academic counselor as well. Your school should have, a tutoring center for those that are struggling in certain areas. If your class, if your professor does have a TA, going to them or going directly to your professor for those office hours, right? And again, the anxiety might hit and tell you like, oh, I don't want to, seek out the help, or I don't want to, look like I don't know what I'm doing. But the more you can actually approach and get the help that you need, the better off you'll be. Okay. There's also the Student Health Center. So if you're ever feeling like maybe your hearts are palpitating, or it's hard for you to manage the anxiety, going to the health center can also help. They might redirect you to the counseling center or vice versa. Clubs at this time, I'm not sure if they're running on campus, but having that social network can also be very helpful. And then going to the career center, if sometimes you're stuck and you're not sure the path that you want to take, the career center can also be helpful in that way as well. Okay. So let's see, I'm gonna go ahead and turn it back over to Ryan, and then we'll take questions at the end. Ryan, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, so we'll wrap up. If you have any questions or things that you'd like clarified, please go ahead and drop it into the Q&A at the bottom. So we'll wrap up with just some community resources, and of course, if there's anything that needs additional support, we're here as resources for all of you. Me, Dr. Kao, Ali, we can be a great source as we're part of the VIBE program, again, the Young Adults Intensive Outpatient Program here at Mission Hospital. And so our program specifically works with those that are 18 to about 26, 27-year-olds at that transitional age youth stage of life. And so our program helps in terms of focusing on personal agency, that transitional stage, and change those difficulties that a lot of young adults come into, going from a teen into an adult, learning to better manage interpersonal distress or challenges with relationships, as well as this idea of identity formation. Who am I outside of my family? What kind of career do I want to go into? What do I want to be known for, or what kind of sense of identity do I have? So we really try to address those areas in terms of our VIBE program, utilizing a dialectical behavioral therapy approach, as well as narrative therapy, to help develop the skills as well as create their own life story so that they can feel more effective in their day-to-day. And so like I said, we are a place that can also be used to connect our young adults into other resources such as the Hidden Strength Behavioral Health group that focuses with independent life skills, as well as the Wellness Center and Family Resource Center. They have a lot of free open resources for those that maybe want to learn how to cook or do things on their own, such as, you know, what is it? They have like, I think, play classes, and just a lot of different ways to not only be more independent, but also to interact and build social skills, ways to better understand your own mental health and connect with others that maybe are struggling with their own. So these are great resources in the communities that we can help you look into. And if you have any other further supports or questions, things that you may need outside of those, again, we can be a great resource for that. And so you can always contact us. You can utilize the VIBE email at vibe@stjoe.org if you have any further questions or need resources, and we can be of assistance that way. Our particular VIBE program also is located at the Laguna Beach Hospital, or Mission Hospital in Laguna Beach. And so we have a program for adults that maybe are outside of that young adult range. And so we can always help and connect you know, family members or friends that are outside of the young adult range to give them further support with our PHP or partial hospitalization program, as well as intensive outpatient program for just adults in general. Let's see.
I also wanted to quickly add, I forgot to mention on the previous slide when we were talking about school resources, for those of you that are working as well, sometimes in your organizations or companies, you might have an EAP program, or also called an employee assistance program, where you can get free therapy services through there too. So make sure you check that out if that's something that's relevant for you. So we have a few questions here. So to answer Luis, what are the 3 questions to always ask yourself when you're in distress? So the first one is, on a scale of 1 to 10, what's my distress level? 10 being, you know, unmanageable, I can't handle it, it's too hard, I'm too overwhelmed. 1 being, I'm okay, I don't need help right now. The second question is, what am I feeling in this moment? So being able to label and identify what it is that you're experiencing. And then the third one is, what do I need in this moment? So if I'm at a 7, I'm feeling anxious and confused and just disorganized, maybe I need to go take a walk. Maybe I need to take a warm shower. Maybe I need to take like 2 to 3 minutes just to deep breathe. Maybe I need to talk to a friend, whatever it is that you need, and actually going to do those things. So those are the 3 questions. Let's see. Can I use the VIBE program to learn more about anxiety to support loved one who suffered with GAD? So our VIBE program is targeted specifically for, and I see that you clarified here that you rarely feel stressed or anxious. It's better for the person who's actually experiencing it to seek out the help. So if your loved one, you know, if they are within that age range, telling them to seek out the help and giving them our number to reach out to us for that help as well. So the program is specifically geared for those individuals that are actually struggling. Okay. Okay, and then a couple of other questions here. And Ryan, you can jump in with me as well. How do you teach old generations about these problems when culture and mindset seem as taboo? And can you provide this workshop in Spanish for parents? So yeah, I think that's definitely a hard question, especially when it comes to culture, and especially when it comes to more conservative and generational differences. where we often find that there are some people that are less, one, I think, less understanding or aware of what mental health is all about. And so sometimes it's about educating them. And if they're not necessarily open or willing to receive that information, we can't always change others, but we can always do what's best for us in those moments. And in regards to providing a workshop in Spanish, what we can do is try to team up with a couple of other folks that we have who are Spanish speaking and see if we can, manage something like that as well. Okay, Ryan, do you want to add anything?
No, I think I agree. Definitely in terms of connecting with those are maybe unaware about mental health or feel like it's taboo, to really understand their perspective and kind of validate what it is that's their concerns are or where they're kind of coming from, and then help provide education and being gentle with what it is that they're concerned about, and approaching it in a way that helps them to hopefully see what could be beneficial of managing stress or being aware of anxiety, and kind of like what you're saying, Dr. Cow, not pushing it or trying to make them change, but just helping them to see that there could be other options or things that could be beneficial for them to at least consider in terms of being aware of stress and anxiety.
Okay, thank you. And then we have one more question. What are some common unhealthy coping mechanisms that are perpetuated by societal norms and the media? You want to take this one and I can add?
Yeah, so I think some of the common unhealthy coping mechanisms that are typically perpetuated are, drugs and alcohol. I think most recently with the whole Netflix show 13 Reasons Why, like self-harm, things like that are very unhealthy. And what we're talking about with making sure that education is highly important, and why we're doing these seminars is so that you are aware of what's appropriate and what's not, and what it actually looks like, and to understand when help is needed to better address and manage these things in a healthy way, rather than doing things that are unhealthy, such as drugs or alcohol. Because I feel like those things are more temporary and usually lead to other problems or can exacerbate the anxiety or stress that we're struggling with.
Yeah, and I'd also add another common one that we see a lot is isolation. Sometimes we don't think of it necessarily as a coping mechanism, but it is. I think there's a ton of different reasons why people isolate or withdraw or just not engage or connect anymore to what they used to enjoy doing, or like with their loved ones and things like that. There's so many different reasons why, but like I was mentioning earlier, isolating or avoiding, unless the purpose is more so for solitude, which is different than isolating, is to really recoup and take that time for yourself to manage your stress. Isolating in the long run can really be detrimental to your mental health as well. So the idea is to continue to engage, to continue to approach, to continue to stay active and connected with your community and other people that are there to support you around you. Okay, and then let's see.
Next one is cannabis any good as a coping method for anxiety in the short term or long term? I think cannabis itself, I understand why a lot of people usually turn to it because of the effects it has. It's calming. It's kind of helps build appetite if we're, feeling anxious and not willing to eat. However, I feel like a lot of substances, cannabis included, are more a band-aid rather than the solution. And so usually when we're using substances like cannabis, we're trying to manage the symptoms and those feelings of anxiety, like it's uncomfortable and it's difficult to feel that. However, you're not really addressing the actual root cause of the anxiety and really trying to solve the problem. I think it's more possibly people turn to it and it might be helpful in the short term. However, I think it's more a short-term band-aid that will ultimately maybe make things worse if we keep kind of what Dr. Tao was talking about earlier. If we keep avoiding and trying not to engage in the thing that's causing us our anxiety, then it's just going to prolong it. So we want to try to meet anxiety and use opposite action head on rather than avoid it.
Great, thank you. Okay, any last questions, you guys? Okay, well, oh, one more. Do you have to be enrolled in school to join the VIBE program? If you can't, are there other programs outside of having to enroll in school? No, you do not have to be enrolled in school. Some of our young adults aren't necessarily in school, they have a job, you know, so to answer your question directly, it's no. And so, yeah, you're able to join the program. And what we usually do is, you know, if you call us and you feel like you're interested in the program and or your loved one is interested in the program, what we do is an assessment, which is an opportunity for us to gather more information and get to know what's going on with you or that person, and if you're a good fit for the program. So we don't necessarily just take everybody, because we want to make sure that what we're targeting are, you know, specific to your needs and specific to what the program provides. Okay. Any last questions? One more. How else can we creatively incorporate your advice into our community? For instance, as a psychology club at Saddleback. That is a great question. Any thoughts on this one?
Incorporate advice into our community.
I think for one, you know, in the beginning we were talking about this webinar series as being a series. So we're going to have ongoing webinars such as this, wanting to keep it short and simple and sweet. And so for those that are really wanting more information, or if you feel like your club, I'm imagining maybe it's a Psych-Hi club, if you're able to kind of recruit some of those individuals into attending some of these webinars, that might be a helpful way of doing it as well. Let's see.
I think another way could be, you know, when I was running college clubs, we would have panels and kind of have general meetings or meetings where we would have specialists, you know, alumni sometimes come back to our program or come back to our meetings and kind of talk about ways to, especially when we had alumni come back, talk about ways to kind of address adulthood and that transition. What were some of the challenges, ways to better manage going into adulthood and going into careers. So maybe sometimes having like a panel could be a creative way to incorporate it at your club.
Great. And then the last question, are there any programs or classes for those who want to support loved ones with anxiety? So there are probably many around. I think a good source for you would be NAMI, National Alliance for Mental Illness. They usually on their website have a list of different classes and support groups and things like that where you can be directed. There's also tools that can also give you guys some good information on what support groups and classes are out there as well. Ryan, do you have any other ideas?
Yeah, I think NAMI, the wellness centers. I think it really depends on specifically who's the loved one. Is it like a family member or a friend? We can definitely connect you to specific programs or ones that are available currently. Most of them are probably via Zoom now. And if you want to contact us directly, feel free to email us at vibe@stjoe.org, and we can definitely give you resources that you are looking for.
All right. Okay, I think that's it. We just want to say thank you all for attending, and hopefully this was insightful for you all, and hopefully you guys can attend our next one as well, as we're going to be talking about mindfulness practice and how it can benefit us in our day-to-day lives. So again, if you have any other questions, please contact us. You have our email there. And yeah, we just want to say thank you, and hopefully we'll see you at the next one.
Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.